I'm Jemima Pett. Welcome to my home. I'm going to read an extract from the Princelings of the East, which is this is the paperback version. It comes in 3 ebooks or a single trilogy in one paperback. The bit I'm going to read to you is where Fred and Hugo have arrived at the Inn of the Seventh Happiness, which is, if you like, it's a sort of major junction in the absolute middle of nowhere. And, well, Fred met Hugo in the tunnel and he was sort of going along with him, but George got separated and went up a different tunnel. You'll have to read about what happened to him yourself. So they've had some dinner, and Fred's just going back to the bar to order another drink. Fred went over to the bar and asked Victor for some more strawberry juice and a melon chaser. Victor waved him back to his seat and told him he'd bring it when ready if he didn't mind. "Awful busy. It'll quieten down soon. Only overnighters stay past midnight." Midnight? Fred was right then. They'd left the castle in the marsh a little while after sunset, but could never have travelled this far in less than 5 hours. He got to thinking about time and how it could fly or drag. He got himself so lost in his thought, he was very nearly grumpy when he was interrupted by Victor with the food and drink, but remembered both his manners and his thirst in time. "Where's Hugo gone?" "Oh, he's over with Prince Lupin. I wanted to catch up with him. I haven't seen you before. Are you Hugo's new apprentice?" Victor asked, settling down beside him with a drink he'd brought over. No," said Fred, working out that only the last comment needed an answer. "I was travelling with my brother George, and we met Hugo when he came into the tunnel we were in." "Brother George? I haven't served him yet." Victor looked around worried, like someone failing in his duty. "No, we got separated," Fred reassured him. "If he turns up here after we've gone, will you tell him which way to go?" he asked anxiously, only slightly less guilty when Victor assured him George would get Victor's best attentions. "And where are you from?" asked Victor. "The castle in the marsh," replied Fred, wondering how long it would be before he got back there. Heard people claim their birthplace," said Victor. "Not met someone claiming to come straight from there." "I don't think we're renowned as travellers," Fred smiled, "but lots of my cousins have gone travelling one way or another." "Your brother George? He looks like you. Will I recognise him?" "He's very alike, but slightly redder hair, and he hasn't got a crest," explained Fred. "We're non-identical twins, but people often mix us up, even with the different hairstyles. This is good strawberry juice," he added, hoping to turn the questioning round the other way. "Thank you. We still get called for traditional drinks. Most people drink what Vosner or Frex these days." "I've not heard of either of those." "Castle Marsh must be off the network. You'd have had the trade otherwise. They're all the rage. Hugo is involved. Brought us Vosner years ago. Only drinks Vosner, that one." Victor supped his drink, which was in a bottle marked Vex in green lettering. "We're having trouble with an energy drain." Fred decided to put his cards on the table. "You said your father had gone away looking for more energy." "Yes, energy drains periodically. Always worse when we're low on stocks. Got the usual sources: sun, water, pedal power. We have this clever game in the backyard. The kids love it. Climb up the top of a tower and swing off. Does great things for our energy store. Can't keep up though. Oh, I'd better get back." And he got up as Hugo came back to the table, accompanied by a tall, handsome prince, who either had been incredibly messy as his feet were covered in soot, or, more likely, thought Fred, was of a particularly noble line, and this was his royal regalia. "No, stay, Victor," said Prince and Hugo, more or less in unison. "We want to hear more about your father," added the prince. "Prince Lupin, may I present Princeling Fred of Castle in the Marsh," said Hugo, as Fred bowed deeply and formally with his castle's special sign. "Fred, you are in the presence of Prince Lupin of Buckmore." Fred stayed in position. "OK, Fred, rise. I'm not that formal outside the castles themselves," said the prince, seating himself comfortably by the table with his feet up. Fred grinned and relaxed. This was the sort of prince he and George liked. "Settle yourself back again. Victor, tell me more about your father. I hear he's gone wandering." "Not wandering, begging your pardon, Prince," said Victor in a suitably modern modest tone and much more formally. "He was anxious about the drain on our energy. He said he was going to find more." "Which way did he go, and when?" asked the prince. 3 moons ago. He set off after closure, along the Corey-Vechstein line." "Probably thought to check out what happened at the first castle to be affected," said Hugo to the prince. "Excuse me, Prince Lupin," said Fred, "but we also have a problem with the energy drain, and I am tasked to find out more about it." Lupin and Hugo both looked at Fred, Lupin with interest, assessing him in a more positive light, and Hugo's look was rather more disconcerting. "Okay, young Fred," said the prince, "I will give you a crash course in the energy drain, but first we must find out a little bit more about Victor's father, since Victor cannot come with us and keep the inn going." Lupin started to ask Victor about his father and the times when energy seemed to be at its lowest. Fred found himself nodding in the warmth of the room, and although he caught words like delivery and turnover and dynamo, they all seemed very distant, as did the words Castle Buckmore, which seemed to be joined to the phrases set off for and at first light. He came to with a start and tried to look as if he had been listening and thinking. Victor was just standing up and nodding in a different way and thanking the prince for his attention. "Don't worry too much, young man," said the prince to Victor. "You're doing a grand job here, and your father will be proud of you. Keep up the good work. We would be in a sorry state if the Inn of the Seventh Happiness was to close." "Now, Hugo," he said, turning to him as Victor scurried off, "if we are going to make progress on this, we need to be careful. But we need to make haste, since the situation is getting critical. I'll go and brief my lads and get some sleep. I'll see you both in the morning in the breakfast room. Good night to you both." He nodded politely, Fred bowed again, and Lupin laughed gently as he strode off. "Time to turn in, young man," said Hugo. "The room's this way." And he led the way across the inn and down a staircase that corkscrewed into a corner. "How far is it to Castle Buckmore?" asked Fred. "We'll probably arrive before sundown if we get away at first light. I don't know what you did, but it made a good impression on the prince. He's not usually too quick in taking up with other people. Got too many of his own to look after already." They arrived at their room, a small cubbyhole, not much larger than the hidey-hole Fred and George had left at their own castle. "You take that corner. Sleep well and get yourself up quickly when we're called. We need to be on our way pronto." Fred shifted round Hugo to get to the corner and settled down as he'd been told. He had plenty to think about, but he really felt in need of a sleep. He wondered what would happen at Castle Buckmore. He closed his eyes and stayed still for what seemed like 5 seconds before he felt the need to scratch his leg. He opened his eyes again and started. Someone was tickling his leg with a feather. Victor's face was looking out of a small hole in the floor at the foot of the bed. He put a finger to his mouth in the age-old warning to be quiet, then beckoned Fred to follow him. Fred did so, even more quietly than a mouse, leaving Hugo gently snoring in the other corner. They went down a narrow tunnel, then up some stairs, and emerged into some well-lit, beautifully appointed rooms. "Sorry, young Fred," said Prince Lupin. "I think you should leave now with my friend and steward here, the former Princeling Baden. He'll introduce you to someone who can explain when you get to Buckmore. You can sleep in the carriage." Fred, not sure who could be trusted and who could not, decided to go with the flow. He got into a carriage for the first time in his life and set off with an unknown but amiable guy called Baden into the dark of the night. And that's it for today. Thanks very much. See you again.